So, good afternoon, everybody. Let me show you what I've got for you today. This is a Panasonic model number. Let's just look at the bottom. RC6010 flip clock in rather nice shape, if a little dirty on top. We've still got the 2-year warranty sticker that was characteristic of Panasonic stuff in this early 70s era. We have a flip clock that looks to be in nice shape. And what else do we see on a quick inspection? Well, that I paid $13 Canadian for it. Take that sticker off, which, given that these are fairly collectible, this isn't the Back to the Future clock, but it's close. It's in the same set of models in the same color. There we go. That came off easily enough. So the cord has been repaired with bathroom tape, but that's easy enough to fix. If you have an idea of age, this is pre-polarized plug. And you'll see we've got a CSA sticker on the bottom. So that puts us, I believe, in the first half of the 70s. Somewhere about then. I remember by the 80s, everything was polarized as far as I can remember. So what I'm going to do is plug this in just down beside me. I will say I've done this before. And we'll see if my earlier observations are correct and what's working and what isn't. So let me just do that now. Okay, so it's plugged in. The first thing you note is that the backlight is dead. It's set to 332, which is not correct, but we'll look at that in a minute. If I put my ear right up to it, I can hear the motor going. But while we're waiting for that, let's turn on the radio and see how it works. Oh, we'll talk maybe about the controls. This is the sleep timer. Mechanical sleep timer. We'll shut off the radio after, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes. I don't think this model has a snooze button or anything like that on it. So we have a volume control. There's a conventional selector switch, volume control, AM, FM band switch. It's a shame they didn't make that white to match the case. We've got the clock setting knob. Outside is the alarm time, which moves this dial along here. And look, it just changed. So you can slide along here to set the alarm time. PM. I could hear it click as I went over, and we could set it for, say, 7 a.m. Right? Very straightforward. That's difficult to see along the side, unfortunately. So those controls are straightforward. On this side, we have the radio tuning knob. So it says 333. We'll keep an eye on that and see if it changes again. So let's turn the radio on. We're on FM. Let's just try one more.
Broadly speaking, there are two kinds of...
Okay. FM seems to work just fine. I've tried a few stations and the dial seems to be more or less in order. While I was doing that, the clock has flipped the next minute, which fits with the recording counter I can see above. So FM seems to work just fine. I presume AM will as well. So there's French CBC here in Toronto.
And I don't like it, like the instructor, very uppity and full of...
So yeah, the radio works just fine. Won't expect great performance from the AM radio, particularly with the computer and stuff around here, as is normally the case. So, clock works, radio works. Shall we see if the alarm works? Let's put it on auto, we'll put it on FM. Let's tune it. Okay. So we're at CBC AM. Sorry, CBC Classical, or CBC Music, which plays classical this time of day. That would be pleasant to wake us up from our nap. Let's set this. Oh, this is now 3:35. Let's make sure I'm turning this the right way. And we'll set it for... Oops, I went past it. We'll set it for 3... Oops. I'm not doing this very well. Okay, so we want to set it for, say, there, and turn it on auto. Ah. Okay, I went past it. So it's turned on. If we continue to turn this dial, it turns off. So I think we can probably say, although that wasn't a proper test of the alarm, I think we can say it works, and I'm sure it will make horrible beeping noises if we switch it over to that. The one thing that I noticed isn't working is the backlight. So there should be a backlight, I'm not sure above or below, probably below on this clock, that should be on the display. So we do need to open it up to see if we can change the backlight. But everything else on this clock seems to be working properly, and apart from an irritating task of cleaning all the dust out of all these little holes, I mean, there's not that much, it's not severely yellowed. You know, here's adhesive from stickers that's still on after goodness knows how many years. I'm sure they were the original ones because this one's still on. There are a few little scuffs, but nothing really to talk about. So I'm going to take off the tuning knob. That comes off easily. And these are the clock setting knobs on this side. I don't know if these will need to be removed. I'll leave those for the moment. I think they will. I'm going to unplug it. Okay. It's now unplugged. I'm going to try to remove these. Oh, there we go. A little wiggling and they come off quite easily. It's nice that they're all the same knob. Well, that's certainly the trick with these, is just to hold on to them and give them a little wiggle and they come right off. I'll have to remember that. So now we'll have to take a look at the bottom here. And it looks like these screws probably hold in the clock mechanism, so I'm not going to touch them at this point. I've got a bit of a spider into that one. I'm going to reach over here. So these ones I'm not going to take out. Wonder if that's the alarm sounder that comes in under there. This doesn't have any sort of battery backup. I'm going to guess it's just these four, and maybe this one. This is the transformer under here. These may hold in the transformer as well, which might explain why there are two screws there. Again, if you look at the bottom, it's got, you know, the inspection sticker, one. It's got service manual, it's got CSA, we've got French on it. So maybe I'm a little wrong about the date. Maybe it's a little later than the early 70s because it's got French on it. Maybe we're into the later 70s. And maybe I misremembered how late some of these plugs were still in use. These types here that are not polarized. The screws all have that nice little click sound that suggests that no one's ever been inside it, which is nice. made by Matsushita Electric, made in Singapore. True of a lot of Panasonic stuff. Did I get this one? Yes, I think we have all the screws out. So can we get the top cover off? Or the bottom off? I've got 4 screws. We should have a 5th. Oh, there's a 5th. Well, we should have a 5th with one of these 2. Yeah, this one here. But there was also a 5th screw here that I didn't notice before, or 6th screw here that I didn't notice before. Okay, so let's see if we can shake those out. All the same size so far. And here's the cabinet off the top. Case is nice. The temptation to just wash this, you can see the way dust has gotten attracted to the inside of the plastic. So here's the clock mechanism here. Here's the radio. Fairly standard looking Panasonic fare. Small speaker. I'm gonna see if I can reach a brush over here, just to brush a little dust out as I go. It actually sounds better than I would have expected with this little speaker. The speaker is not much to write home about. Okay, this whole board is held on by a single screw here. The speaker is just resting in a little rubber housing. We have a not fully, but mostly enclosed transformer here. Clock is marked made in Singapore. And I'm trying to see, so there are a couple of questions to ask. First, if you look at sort of the earlier Techron kind of based, Technicron, something like that. You know, the sort of standard side by side with a mechanical electric clock in it. Radios, the electric clock is usually operating on 110 volts. 115, 120, whatever. And and it switches the AC line to the transformer to drive the radio. So that switching is all done in the electromechanical device. What I don't know here is whether the clock is driven by AC, because that's going to tell us a lot about what kind of light bulb to expect in here. There's the other screw. So if you look in here, oops, let me find a flashlight. Reaching across. Down in there, we can see the tuning dial, all done with plastic gearing. Okay, we under no circumstances want to remove this radio board if we don't have to, because getting that appropriately aligned is going to be difficult. I can almost see back in there the label on the size of the clock motor. It says 1.5 watts, 60 hertz. I can't see the voltage on it. I'm just curious as to where the backlight, assuming there must be one, is. I wonder if this front faceplate here comes off. That would give us access to it. Let's see if I can figure out how it might be attached. Okay, the difficulty here is you would have to lift it out around the dial pointer, and very nervous about trying to do that. So I think I'm not going to. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these 4 screws from the bottom here. I'm holding the speaker with my hand. I'm going to remove these 4 screws and see if I can lift out the clock mechanism. This is just the little dirt protector that was over the band switch. Makes it impossible to get deoxit into a band switch without disassembling the whole radio. I'm trying to do this without damaging the speaker or letting it drop onto anything. Okay, we are now up to 2 kinds of screws, but fortunately they're logically clear which is which, so I don't know how much of this is actually being captured on the camera. My apologies for that. Okay, let's see if we can. No, we can't unplug the camera, the speaker. It's soldered on. Okay, so can we lift out this puck mechanism? We're being limited a bit by this wire loom here. Yes. There we are. There's the clock mechanism right there. Looks to be in beautiful shape. We will touch that as little as possible. And so the question then is, what is this bulb? Let's see, so the 10 volts, switch rating DC 20 volts. Oh, and we have a 60 hertz, 10 volts. That was down on the side here. I'll glue that back on before I close it. So this little label that was inside says 60 volts, AC, 10 volts. Then switch, there's a coil, and then the motors are directly attached to that. We have plastic gearing, we have the 2 little catches here, the little metal catches that cause the, and here is our bulb. Let's see if we can get it out. So we know that this bulb is likely, push forward, maybe we can unclip the whole bulb holder. Probably, but I think I'm going to damage this old plastic by doing that. So let's see if we can slide it out one way or the other. I just want to be careful not to break anything else in my attempts to get this lamp out. Look at that bulb. The filament doesn't look bad. Where's it going to? Where does the cave wire go? Now I should say this is quite safe to plug in and work on because we now know that the only voltage coming out of here are going to be, that the only voltage switched on this thing, unlike older radios, is going to be low voltage, isolated by a CSA proved transformer. So this is pretty safe. Okay, we're going to take this off. The risk of breaking this plastic is less serious in my mind than damaging the rest of the clock. So now we just need to get this bulb out. It's going to have to go out the front if we could get a meter on that bulb. I'm going to have a good look at it with a light here and see if I can see. Oh no, it doesn't look broken to me, but low voltage bulbs, it's hard to tell sometimes. So what I think I'm going to do is just see if I can expose the wire here a little bit, so I can see whether there's any voltage on it, and also, of course, whether it's shorted or open. So there's one side exposed. There's the other. And so what I'll do is I'll plug it back in because I need to see what that voltage might be. And that's going to be more important. Voltage, if there's voltage and there's no light, then we know what the problem is. And it's going to be interesting to know whether it's AC or DC. And my guess is it's probably 10 volts AC, which potentially creates a problem for how to deal with this. Hopefully those won't short. So over here, slide this over a bit. We've got the meter. We'll put it on AC volts because, that's right in. There we go. AC volts. And we'll plug it in and see what that shows. And there we go. We've got 10 volts AC, well, 10.7. So the question is, what kind of lamp to put in there? If it was DC, the temptation to just put an LED in it would be pretty strong. After all you do need is a matching resistor. And here now, I mean, you could. You could, and you can see that with the blue plastic, the attempt was to make this light kind of blue. That was what they were going for. So what you could do, I mean, you could put in a big enough resistor and say, oh, the LED will survive it. You could put in a diode and an LED. Use the diode to drop some of the voltage, right? And then a resistor to control the rest of it. I have to think about that. Well, I couldn't keep myself away from this, so I do have, in fact, put together a circuit that I think will work. And essentially, I'm going to use a diode, an LED, a resistor, and I'm going to put this totally ridiculous 10 microfarad capacitor in there. What I'm aiming for is about 20 milliamps on this LED here, right? This is a cold white LED, that's all I've got, but considering it's got a blue lens on the lamp, I think that's reasonable. The diode will drop about half a volt. So that'll bring that 10.7 volts down to 10.2. There'll be about 3.2 volts, something like that on the LED, and the rest we got to drop across the resistor. Right? Fairly straightforward. And the capacitor will keep it from flickering, because otherwise it's going to flicker at 60 hertz, right? Because there's only one diode in there. So essentially what we're building is a very simple, unregulated power supply to drive this LED. This is probably unnecessary. This is probably unnecessary if you didn't put the capacitor in. You could just use a larger value. That's pretty well what the goal is here in terms of designing this little circuit. All these parts, well, the LED is actually going to be a little hard to fit in because I want to bend it because it's straw hat. I want to bend it so that it's pointing up towards the dial face, and it'll then get diffused a bit by the blue lens. So what I'll do is put a bend in that, and then we'll solder the resistor to one side of that line. We'll probably put it on the positive, and we'll just cover that all up with heat shrink. Right, so that'll be fairly straightforward. This is no problem finding a place for it, but it's got to go before the capacitor, and the capacitor is going to be a little bit hard to place. I probably have a smaller one, but I kind of want to use a brand name one in this just because. So, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll put this circuit together, and then we'll attach it to the radio, see if it works, and then go from there. Okay, so the short answer is it does fit in. Just to give you some idea of how it works, and we'll just put this, won't be as bright as it will be obviously, but you can see the aiming's not too bad, and you'll get a bit, it's all right. So I'm reasonably happy with that. I think there's enough space for it to fit. I did, as I was afraid, crack these two little legs when I took the plastic piece out, but they're glued back and that should be fine. So what we now need to do is we need to put this in one of these, the capacitor, which I've now misplaced, it's under here somewhere, across. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck all that circuitry in over here and not worry about trying to, because I've got enough extra wire here. It'll just fit down in here out of the way. So down over here, below sort of, or beside the radio dial. There's actually quite a lot of space in this case. If you wanted to do it properly, you could make up a little board, but I will not do that, I don't think. So that's what I'm going to do next. I will need to get the diode. I think we'll continue to put everything on the positive line. And then solder this in. Well, put the capacitor on, solder this in, and put these wires across. And then I won't cut these very short. And then if there's any issues around them, if anyone wants to put the bulb back in, it would be straightforward enough to do. All right, so that's what I'm going to get to now. Okay, I have everything in place. I haven't put the screws in yet. Let's plug it in again and have a look. Okay, and if we look, there we go. Not perfectly even, but it never was. I'm reasonably happy with that. I'm going to have another look at my wire routing here. It's sort of stuffed up in here behind the dial, and I actually think it's okay. I don't think anything's going to happen to that in there. From this angle, you can see the, I don't know if it'll show on, but underneath there, you can see the spinning of the clock motor, which is visible on some of the kinds of clocks. But yeah, I'm reasonably happy with that. Okay, I'm going to button it up. I've washed the cabinet and the knobs, and as you'll see, it came out looking very good. Okay, here you can see that I've got it almost all together. I just have to put the knobs on. I want to wipe off the front of the face. You can see that the top of the cabinet cleaned up beautifully. Just a few spots I could have done better. I actually put this under a tap, being very careful not to get it on this sticker, and it came out very well. So I will just spray a little bit of Windex on one of these claws, let it soak in. I'm just going to use that to wipe off the front here. I probably should, now that I look at it, there's a little edge in there. Can I get into some of it with this? Yes. So we'll see if we can get in and clean that up in there. A lot of stuff from the 70s that it seems designed to collect dust. But look at that, you can see it looks so much better already. As I said, the top looks great. I've done a very light wipe on the bottom. And I was able to trim the wires in my capacitor, which I don't think is adequately covered with a heat shrink, but I can't really do anything about it now. I was able to get those back in a corner where I think they're safe. And again, they're on the secondary of the transformer. There's not that much current on them, but still. So let me get the knobs and then we can finish this up. Here are the knobs. They cleaned up beautifully. This is the tuning knob over here. There we go. Tuning works very smoothly on this. We have 3 identical volume style knobs. And I will note that in a couple of spots on this cabinet, they've hidden the injection molding marks in where the knobs go. Good design, that. And not perfect, they're a little bit more yellow, and they've got another number of these kinds of little bits and pieces that are hard to clean, but seems to be okay. And now we just have the clock setting knobs. So that's for the alarm. And that one is for the time. So there's the time. Sorry, my phone was trying to give me a notification there. So there's the time. And one of the things is that they turn opposite ways to set. So we could set this, for example, to 7 a.m., like I said before. Okay, so let's go plug it back in, try everything, make sure it's still functioning. Oh, I should say I did take the tape that was off of the cord. There was a nick in one of the 2 wires on here, so I mean, really I could have replaced the cord, or I could have shortened it, I suppose. But I don't know, I didn't really want to, so I replaced the medicine cabinet tape with a couple of layers of electrical tape, which is not the best solution, but it's fine for now. Anyway, let's plug this in and see how it's working. Okay, so we have our backlight, which is functioning. And let me just check the direction. We could set the times a little after 4 today. I had to change the aiming of the LED a little bit. But it should be okay. But this is a good, so it's pointing a little bit more this way, but the advantage of that is we've now doing a good job at lighting up the we'll say 408. That seems to be, so we can listen to see if that works. And now we'll just turn down the volume and try out our radio. Let's see if we can find
of the event closer. So we do have a winter weather travel advisory for Toronto and stretches back into southwestern Ontario and along the north shore of Lake Erie.
So the FM is working. Let's try AM.
With a chance of flurries or rain. It's 2 degrees. I'm Matt Holmes with sports. Here's Rod Mudd. Local sports office.
Them and go, oh my God, Chris Drury's ruined the team. I think it's
Action. Well, office members will not be using TikTok.
But there is no sign of the suspect. Now, not to make things confusing, but the vehicle the suspect was driving that was
right. So there we go. The radio is working. Just out of curiosity, let's try the sleep timer.
Phil Martino, City News.
City News Time 4:08. Peel Police say they've recovered a weapon after an incident at a school in Brampton.
There we go. So that seems to be working. So we'll just wait. 4:08. We should be getting a flip on the clock soon. So we wait for that because that is, after all, there we go, 4:09. Pretty quick, not too loud on this one. So there we go. And the finest of, and again, based on a couple of things, particularly the French on the bottom, I'm saying the second half of the 70s, but 1970s Panasonic, late 70s, shall we say, flip clock. So here is the LED light that I put in place here, and it's working, and it's flickering despite the capacitor on it. I don't know if that'll show in the video, but it does show in the display of the phone. And I've got to say that while it's okay, I'm not really terribly satisfied with it. So what I've done is I've ordered some 3mm lamps, kind of the kind that GM used to solder all over their dashboards at one point. Oh, clock works great though. And I'm going to, I think, go back to incandescent in this clock. And I don't know if I'll use 1 or 2 of those little lamps because they're smaller and probably lower output than the original one. But I can always put a couple in parallel. They're rated for 12 volts, but I would bet that the original lamp in here was being underrun and was a 12 volt lamp as well. Anyway, so there'll be a follow-up when I revert it to its original design. Thanks, everyone.